And we are live. Happy heresies and welcome to the desert of the real. This is the live Aeon Bite, Heretics Anonymous. Thanks everyone for making it tonight. Glad to see everybody. And again, I hope you're piling into the chat room. We will take questions. And as always, we've got a great show. Before we get started, if things look a little bit different, this has been quite a week for me. My PC completely died and basically cut me off at the knee. So I am completely cut off from basically all my files, recordings, and everything. It's never happened in all these years doing Aeon Byte. So this would be a time, basically Aeon Byte has come basically to a standstill. I'm using a loaner computer, so it's great we can still do the Hangouts, the Heretics Anonymous live. But I am cut off from the podcast right now. So I'm asking for any help you guys might have. Trying to raise some funds to get a new computer and get the ship out again, because right now there will be no podcast being put out. And yes, some of you are going, yay, no introductions, life is good. But this is where I am. It's kind of a weird situation. So please help out if you can in any way. Go to the godabovegod.com if you want to help out with the little funds, and we'll get there. But right now, again, it's a strange place to be where I am completely cut off from all means to do it. And again, I need this lone computer is doing the job for any graphic design, video design, and all that. It's great. It's great that an angel named the MoonDog is helping out a lot too, especially with a backup. But again, I need a machine strong enough to be able to create the podcast that you guys deserve. But I will continue as I have for many years, trying to get the Gnosis out to you. And tonight we got some great Gnosis. So first of all, and of course, this will be the first part is for everybody. I will hopefully have the audio version out or the podcast version out in a few days for iTunes and everything else. And for patrons and members of the Archive of past shows, you'll get the entire dope. So tonight, we definitely have the pleasure of having somebody that I have interacted for years. I've enjoyed interacting with him. I've enjoyed what he writes on Facebook and other places, and I find his work fascinating. And of course, he's a man who enjoys or understands the ethos of the Gnostics, and that's Sam Johanna. How you doing, Sam? Thanks for joining us. It's awesome.
Welcome. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you on, and we should have some good conversations. And of course, as always, we've got the backdrop man himself, the Abraxas chicken wing man, and the MoonDog himself. How you doing today, Vance?
I'm already good. It's getting a little hot in here, though. You can see I got something cooking in the back.
Somebody's got to have those Johnny Carson era jokes, man. What would we do without him? And last but certainly not least, we actually have a man also of Gnosis. Unfortunately, he's a Patriots fan too. And so that he's part of the evil cabal trying to rule the world, which would make him a Patriots fan. But we've got Occult Fan himself, Nate. How you doing, Nate?
Hey there, Miguel. Hey there, Sam, and hey, Vance, and hey, everyone in the chat. Just want to say that the Rams had to be sacrificed, and we also have Henry here with us this evening too. So Henry says hi to everyone.
Wow, what is that?
It's a crystal in skull. So it's actually made of resin, but it came into my life the other day. Ton of syncs with Hellier, I'll say, and I'll leave it there. Go Patriots and Red Sox.
No, never.
Always.
That's gonna block the Gnosis right there, man. That's our kind of talk.
They are the Gnosis. All right, man, that's all the sports we need for one evening.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get to some better places at least next year. So, so Sam, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, about your life, and how you eventually, as I like to say, your spiritual hitchhiking, and how you went into more, you might say, unorthodox spiritualities.
Oh, okay. Well, I started out. I mean, my mom, man, she works with the Ancestors. She passed away in September. She very strong Christian, raised me that way. So, that's all I knew for a long time. I ended up going to Job Corps when I was 17, and there was kids there that practiced Wicca. So I was always taught that that was Satan worship, the devil. So I asked one of them one day, just old, I was like, "Yo, ain't this like Satan worship?" They was like, "No, no, it has nothing to do with the devil. We don't believe in God to worship the devil. You have to believe in God to believe in Satan." So they was like, it's nature worship, appreciation of nature itself. So when I heard that, I was like, okay, cool. But a year before that, I didn't know anything about any other religion. And because I was going to Job Corps, the teachers at the school I was at, they just let me roam free in the library. I didn't have any classes. So they was like, it's your last few days. Just go in the library, do what you want to do. As long as we see you doing something, we don't really care. Cool. So I started reading this history book about all the religions, about the Hindus and the Buddhists and Confucius, and how they were 500 years before Jesus, and also that they were preaching the same message. Like my mom never knew that stuff. She always taught me that everything that wasn't Christianity was evil. And in the Black community, Christians and Muslims really don't see eye to eye. Like that's basically Farrakhan versus TD Jakes. So, I looked at the Muslims indifferent, not individually, but just as a whole. And when I started reading about Muhammad and Islamic invasions and other religions, Confucius and his life and everything else, I was like fascinated. So I realized that fast forward, I got married, and then I was never happy. I never liked church. I never liked gospel music, but I did like God. I did believe in God, but basically the basics of Christianity I never liked. And so I read the Da Vinci Code. I read the book before I saw the movie, and I learned about the Gnostics and that they were intellectuals, and Jesus being married, and there was other gospels. So I went and I bought Forgotten Scriptures, and all it had was Thomas, Philip, Mary Magdalene, and the Gospel of Truth in it. And I read the four of those nonstop until I started to understand them, which I didn't get at first. I took everything literal like a regular Christian. So the more I read them, the more I understood, I felt something I never felt in church before, which was a belonging and at home. And I was on Facebook at the time, so I went and joined every single Gnostic group there was to join. But and that's where I met you. Came across your podcast and your radio show, same thing on YouTube. Like I was so hungry to find other people that had the same experiences as me that I hurried up to latch on, to them. And I was still a Christian, like I said at the time. So I had a experience with God, my first like Holy Spirit at the time, Christianity experience around the same time. I was laying in the bed. I just finished this book, and it had said at the end of the book, when you finish this, you'll have an encounter with God. So as soon as I finished the last part of the last page, I felt the Spirit then. But what I saw was myself and my spiritual guide fighting all these different enemies. So basically, we were like shooting guns, and then when we ran out of bullets, I was using bats and sticks and everything else. And so after that, it was just hand-to-hand combat. So I stayed there for like, I don't know how much time went by. And when I came out the room, my mom looked at me. She said, "You just had an encounter with God." And I never said anything. I was in the room by myself. My mom was in my living room. She had no idea. So, we talked about that for a while. And fast forward to I'm still Gnostic Christian. I'm still, going hard. I wasn't I'm still not. I wasn't the type of Gnostic, like a lot of Gnostics around me. They were very, very peaceful, very, calm. I was on fire. When I discovered, started studying church history and seeing all the lies and everything that, they've told, I was on fire. I wanted to see the Vatican burned to the ground, destroyed, the 60-mile tunnel raided of all of its books. Like I was on fire, for years. And so that's the gnosis that I taught. And like I said, my first vision was fighting, on some warrior stuff. So that's what I was on. And that's how I thought. And that was my gnosis. Every time I did meditation, I was taught, like, go fight, go fight. Like, you know, a lot of other Gnostics hated me for it or disagreed with me, you know, kicked me to the curb or just shrugged me aside because of it. You know, and at first, being in my own ego, I was like, you know, well, you know, wanted to cuss him out, you know, talk to him any kind of way. But then I had to realize as the years went by that you can't do that. You know, you just have to let people be people and still be you, still go forward. You know, what the Holy Mother tells me may be way different from what it tells 10 other people, but I have to do my part. So when I came to E5, I was doing security at a casino. I was in Vegas, and I was standing at the doors. I was on day shift. I just started my shift that morning. I ended up standing at the front entrance doors, and I heard the night before I had started getting into the history of us as Black people and Africa itself and the original spiritualities. So I was still a Gnostic, but I was like, I can't be a Christian anymore, because this came to Black people in America and the Caribbean through slavery. It didn't come to us through something nice and good. No, the first slave ship was named Jesus. The second ship behind it was called John the Baptist. And the first two men and women that were deceived to get on the ship, the captain of the ship called them Adam and Eve. So when I found this out, I was disgusted. And I said, oh no, you know, I can't do this. On top of what I've researched about Christianity over the years, I couldn't honestly in myself look at myself in the mirror as a Black man and in America, and plus all the Trayvon Martin and Eric Gardner and all that stuff was going on too. And I said, I cannot do this, look at myself and still claim Christianity. There's no way. This is disgusting to me now. Like, I cannot do this. So when I was standing at the front doors, I was pondering all of this. And I had just got an inbox. We ain't supposed to be on our phones, but I got an inbox of a picture of some pictures from my cousin. And she was like, oh, here's some African gods. In case, you know, since you're curious about our spirituality from the motherland, here you go. And the first one to catch my attention was Oshun. So I had an experience with it at those front doors. Right after I was done looking at the picture, I heard a voice say, you've come home. You've come back to me. You are my son. You have nothing to worry about, and I will take care of you. And I felt something hug me. And I was like, oh man, it was, you know, comforting. And I was good like the whole day. I was in like a great mood. Like, you couldn't tell me nothing. And that's how, you know, now I practice Gnostic Ether from that.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. And I mean, you joined, or you felt a call for ancestral lands and gods and all that. But I mean, as we've spoken, it's not too hard to reconcile Gnosticism, Sophia and the Demiurge, with some of the African lore, right? I mean, you can find these archetypes and figures there. Could you tell us about this?
Well, when I started studying Ifa deeper, when I saw like you look at the myths, one of the myths, the god Ogun, a warrior god and a god of blacksmithing and metal, he they say that he raped the high mother Yemoja, which is the sea goddess. She's like water, the sea god itself. She's goddess of salt water, the opposite of Oshun, who is sweet water, rivers and lakes. So he had raped her the first time and nothing had happened. The second time he raped her, she exploded and all the other Orishas came out. So if you look at the story of Sophia, when she tried to create without the father, she collapsed, she fell. But rather in African myths, she, you know, basically the Holy Mother exploded and everything came out of her. So like when Sophia fell, here comes the demiurge, here comes the archons, here comes the physical world, you know, Mother Earth itself, Lower Sophia, according to Valentinus, you know, things like that. And everything also because she was in distress and afraid and all these different emotions, all these things came, you know, behind with it at the same time. So you look at Yemoja exploding, now you have the goddess of love. You have the god of war, the god of politics, the goddess of wealth. You know, all these things that we as humans in our ego chase after, that we are concerned about. All these things that are earthly came from that act. Same thing with the rape of Eve. I started to really discover how all the mythologies are really linked together.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that is really interesting because you're talking about Imoja, or how we called her Imoja. When I lived in Brazil as a little boy, there's a huge festival, Imoja, the goddess of the sea, and all the Brazilians are out there, all colors, whatever. And of course, the church is like, well, it's really the Virgin Mary, but everybody knows it's this ancient sea goddess. And of course, my godmother was Catholic, but she practiced candomblé on the side. And as a kid, I'd go to her house, we'd pray, and then she would cast all these spells. Unfortunately, I think some of her spells were a bit dark and probably didn't do good. So it's interesting how all this fuses. And what about do you have anything close to a demiurge? Because I know in a lot of the African myths, there is sort of a demiurge tricks. There's either sort of a god that creates the world and then he just sits back. He just not interested. And then there's trickster gods like Asani or Mr. Nancy, as they call them. So tell us about those.
One of them I've seen, they were talking about Alarun or Batala, that he created the earth, basically, the physical world, and he's also the high father, the sky god, the god of clouds. But they say that Arumula is like the trickster, but he really is basically irony and the keeper of basically of karma. Like what you do will come back to you. Like he keeps the scales balanced, basically. And because in African mythology, there is no concept of a devil or a Satan or any of that. That didn't come until Arabs invaded and Europeans invaded and then brought the Satan and jinn and those concepts to us. But in Africa, that didn't really exist. There was really no good and evil. It was just kind of like more of like the choice within you, So it would, the God that represented that had to represent karma and a balancing of the scales, a balancing of the world and humanity and humanity's actions. So pretty much if you did a bunch of bad, Arumula would show up. And now, now you would, now you're going to pay. Basically, he shows up to give you the get back. And if you did good, he would show up to, give you the good. Or if you was just meant to do good, but still not get good in return, which does happen, he was involved in that too. He basically was the one who measured out what was going to happen in your life.
Awesome.
So it could be like a demiurge, like the fates.
Right. Yeah, the trickster god is kind of different. Some call Sophia, Jesus, and all that. And what about concept of the afterlife? Where do you stand at? You talk about karma. What's in the afterlife in your worldview?
Well, for most African spiritualities, it is will be with the ancestors, like the movie Black Panther, how it showed the ancestral realm. That's what it'll be. We'll eternally be with our families, in the higher realms. We'll be with them in perfection, and in rest. There really is no concept of hell.
And there's no reincarnation as far as you can tell. One life.
That depends. Certain tribes did believe in that, and certain ones don't. In my research, I don't really see that in E5, but I have found it in certain individual tribes in Cameroon or in Benin, certain strains of voodoo, voodoo, and Southern African spiritualities. I've seen that individual tribes or, individual areas have a belief in that. Madagascar is kind of famous for that, for spirits still roaming around and chameleons and a certain lemur that they have on the island that's native to the island.
Awesome. And I think we do have a question from the audience. Vance, what is the question?
Firestorm wants to know who Legba is. What about
Papa Legba?
Real?
That's Voodoo.
Yeah.
I've heard of his name before. I heard the story about the crossroads in Mississippi, and that blues singer Jack Johnson made a deal with him, basically sold his soul. But because it's Christian down there, they say he sold his soul to the devil, and it was a demon named Legba. But that's all I've heard of him. I haven't really, because I don't practice voodoo, and I haven't really got too deep into that. So I wish I could answer that question more, but I can't right now.
No problem. Yeah, that's from Lawrence. All right, cool. Thanks. And so, how do you practice spirituality today in sync with your ancestors and so forth? Or obviously, how do you get an experience?
Oh, I just do meditation. The same thing I did as a Gnostic Christian. I just do meditation. And sometimes I read first, because when I was a Gnostic Christian, I was Valentinian. And Valentina spoke about like having an intellectual kind of insight first, and then coming into the spiritual. So usually it happens after I learn something or I've studied, then I meditate on what I've studied, and then I'll have the experience.
That's cool. That's cool. Any other questions? How about you, Nate?
Um, I'm thinking that tonight's more of a learning night. I have a map of the Ifa cosmology in front of me, and I'll just put that on the screen for people to see. But I don't really have too much to say. I've heard about Robert Johnson selling his soul before, but I think that it was just that he was such a good player that most people were unable to understand how good he was, so that was their excuse for it. But
Did you
yeah,
see when I was in Vegas at the Bellagio, they had a picture of a photographer took trying to reenact him selling his soul, and it's a crazy looking picture. It kind of makes you think. It'll make you think, like how the shape of the flames look like a demon's head with horns, and even the smoke, you can see like faces in it. It's crazy. And they said that they had a wild experience taking that photo. The guy at the store was explaining it to me. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't really believe in the devil and Satan. Well, I don't at all. I believe the devil is the evil within human beings ourselves, but it do kind of make your mind wonder, like staring at that photo and hearing the story.
Yeah, but I mean, even in African lore and other places, I mean, like, I think it was Gordon White that said most 99% of cultures have some concept of evil spirits. And at the very least, there are mischievous trickster spirits that can make your life, well, pardon the expression, hell. Wouldn't you agree, Sam? Or what do you think of this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think hell is on earth. I fully believe that. And I believe true hell from an afterlife perspective would be reincarnated and having to come back here.
Yeah, eternal forgetfulness, having to start over and over, kind of like Groundhog Day, or that, or that show, the Russian doll that I've been watching, which is a reboot of Groundhog Day, except it's in New York and all that. So that is interesting. And do you say what exactly did you like about Gnostic Christianity? Do you see it as a bridge to where you need it to go, or like you, when you were talking about the warrior and all that? That's what I liked about Gnosticism was that they were rebellious, that they were cultural critics. They stood up to the orthodoxy and the demiurgic world, and they had no shame, as you say, calling out shit and so forth.
Oh yeah, hell yeah! I think it was because I had already felt like that, even as a fundamentalist type Christian. I had felt already that I'd never liked church. I just didn't like it, and I couldn't stand it. I'd never wanted to go. I believed in God, and I felt that was good enough. So if it wasn't for a Gnostic Christianity, I wouldn't have. It is a bridge because I wouldn't have felt mentally and spiritually bold enough to come to Ifa, nor would I have had any knowledge of the Holy Mother to have that experience with Oshun. And now that I know my true Holy Mother is Oya, the warrior goddess, the goddess of storms, I could better interact with her. Now I understand where the warrior energy comes from, because my Holy Mother is a warrior. You know what I'm saying? For some people, it could be a scholar. For some people, she's strictly a comforter.
Exactly. And what about groups? Do you hang out other groups? Because you talked about you joined these Gnostic Christian groups, Gnostic Cave, and other groups that you and I hang out with. For the African lore, can people find those groups on Facebook, or do you still feel the Black community is still not? They're still, like you say, Christian or Muslim, basically.
There's a lot more Black people coming forward. A lot of Black people are it's Kemetic, Egypt. Well, Egypt. It's a lot of Kemet, and it's a lot of Voodoo as well. There's a lot coming to Ifa, but it's still mostly Christian. but a lot of black people are kind of rejecting the traditional Christian that was, like I said, forced upon us in slavery. That's kind of disappearing, and a lot of blacks are still kind of doing voodoo on the side, but still Christian. Because we're in the age where we carry computers around in our pockets, women carry them around in their handbags and so on and so forth. There's no excuse to not know anything now. There's no excuse. You got Google, right there next to you, so you can research anything. So a lot of and plus all these scandals with all these preachers and Eddie Long and TD Jakes' daughter on camera talking strictly about money, all these things, like, we're turned off. The black community is turned off. So we're starting to come to our own spirituality. There's also a lot of atheism, which I'm disappointed about, but I understand it, on the rise as well.
Yeah, I hear you. But yeah, I think that's across the board. I mean, millennials are turning to basic spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
People want to go to their ancestral religions. It's like, oh my God, my ancestors came from the Norse. I want to learn about the pagans. Others come from the Mediterranean. So in a way, it's good. We're all sort of reaching towards our roots to find the truth, right? Where we came.
Yeah, it's true. I noticed that too. Being up here in Washington, I noticed that for real. There's a lot of folks doing the Celtic thing, polytheism. I think it's amazing. I mean, I love it.
And you're in Washington? I thought you were in San Diego.
No, I'm from San Diego.
Oh, you're from San Diego.
Yeah. I left Vegas, come right up here.
Oh my God! And what, the Raiders are moving to Vegas, right?
Vegas, yeah, I moved right before they got there.
There are trickster gods, man. You just got punked.
I plan on going to one of the games.
Yeah, sooner or later. And Vince, is there any questions from the audience? I think you popped one doing those balloons that I have no idea how you're doing. You're like the Wizard of Oz with this technology.
Yeah, pay no attention to that man behind the microphone. Books. Someone wanted to know what books they could read for things like Ifa, other African mythologies, religions, and so forth.
I have trouble finding the books, though. I mean, I had to go to a place in downtown Seattle just to get this African mythology book. So I tried Barnes and Noble and everything. If you go to a spiritual store, look in the Santeria section or the Voodoo section. And that's the best I could tell you for right now that I know of so far.
Are there any books that you would recommend from certain scholars or authors?
I'm reading like Teaching of the Ages right now, Manny P. Hall. I'm still reading the Nag Hammadi Library as well. I also have this book that I found when I first moved to Vegas in a drawer in a room I was staying in, just left there, called The Greatest Story Never Told. And this book is dope. It is really thick, like a dictionary thick. And this book is dope. It's written by Lana Cantrell from Austria. And she goes into everything about from our diet to scientifically breaking down what the priests were wearing when they did the sacrifices in the Old Testament and the reason for it. Also about how diet affected certain characters in the Hindu Vedas and Sanskrit, everything. Like, she covers the whole basis of everything. The Gnostics, Egyptians, all of that. And that's the number one book I can recommend.
And I'm sure the truth must be hard. I mean, I remember there was one thread and you were talking about the government's trying to do this to black people. And I remember typing and said, dude, don't you realize that this country has been trying to eliminate black people from the get-go? I mean, it's been a continual stream of genocide. I mean, we can go back to, crack and all these things that keep going, the food that they put into the neighborhood. I mean, it's just an ongoing thing. And it's so obvious that I'm sure a lot of people don't want to see the truth. And I'm sure when you tell people the truth, a lot of people are saying, oh man, this nutty conspiracy theory. And you're like, no, they really are trying to kill us.
Really, I'm trying to tell you, they're trying to kill us. They have been.
Dr. Evil, you're really trying to kill me, Dad.
Exactly. It's true. But it's true, though. It's true. I mean, you take the same people who civilized mankind pretty much, if it wasn't for us, there would be no written languages. We invented reading. We invented words. We invented the alphabet. We were the first people to universities come from us. That's why Egypt is so important. We were the first people to do everything, to civilize all of mankind. We also spread out all over the earth to create all the other races. So we got the darkest melanin content. We have the mitochondrial DNA, extra chromosomes, all this. Of course, they would want us to be knocked off. And I'm not the type of person who thinks that all white people are evil and I should never speak to them or none of that. I'm not on that.
That's it, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, though, I'm still a Pan-Africanist. I put black people first before anything, and I was having that discussion today, actually, with a Latino friend of mine by phone. I was saying how, we also here in America, especially with this orange skinned jackass in office, that we really minorities here in America, we really need to look after ourselves. You know what I'm saying? We really should. We need to separate or start our own nation. Why the fuck not? I mean, we need to like this dude I don't want to get into politics, but yeah, the state we're in now and how bold all these racist folks are feeling. No, we got to now more than ever.
Yeah, man. Yeah, because again, it's so obvious. I mean, from the eugenics programs to Planned Parenthood. I mean, I can go on and off, and it's obviously it's not. I don't see this as just eugenics or population control. I honestly see it as sort of a just wipe out or keep it or destroy it to the bone. It's something that I've realized as I've realized a lot of things, and it's a horrible, and I don't think it's going to go away with whether Trump goes away or not. This is also something that's endemic with the wickedness in high places and all that. So, but this is something that needs to be talked about. And when you talk to other people in the Black community, again, is there like in other community, people just want to be in denial? People want to see the world.
I come to find
the Gnostics said, no, it really is that bad. That's what I like about the Gnostics. They didn't apologize. They said, this is it.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. That's what I found commonality with them in, is that they hella stood their ground and they knew what they were saying was true. I study Rome very well. I've read Tacitus's Annals twice in its entirety, 2 times. I come to find that Rome just wanted to control and organize everything. That's how the proto-Orthodox Christians ended up winning at the Synod of Carthage at the Second Council of Nicaea. They won at the First Council of Nicaea. Because a government wants to hear, well, we have a set standard or structure and we don't agree on the small details, but we agree on these big parts. So you take the different Gnostics who would have showed up, and of course they differ, but they don't believe in ranks. We as Gnostics, we don't believe in ranks. We don't believe in a priesthood. We don't believe in none of that. That's bullshit to us. Like we know that we could do this as an individual. Yeah, we believe in coming together and having some fellowship, and the Valentinian way. Every single different meeting, we may have a set standard for that meeting. Like, okay, today, Miguel, you're going to be the priest. I'm going to be the bishop. This person is the reader, and this person is going to give the sermon, and this person. And then next week when we meet, it's going to be all flipped.
Right.
Of course, no government's going to go for that. It's too free. The governments don't want that. They want a submissive people who are going to do whatever the fuck they say. And if you don't fit that mold, you're out.
Right, exactly. No, I agreed with you. And yeah, you're talking, Marcus the magician and all that. And when you were reading, when you were studying the Nag Hammadi, and you still are, like you said, and into the Valentine, what were some of your favorite texts and why? What do they speak to you?
I like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and the Gospel of Judas. I like the Gospel of Judas because it told the truth about what was going on now, thousands of years early. Like how when Judas said, I saw in the house that some of the men were murdering their children and some of the men were having sex with each other and stuff like this. And I was like, man, the Vatican is doing that right now. You know what I mean? How did the writer of the Gospel of Judas know? And
back then, probably.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I said, how did he know? He He was pulling a card. He was calling it out early. And then the Gospel of Mary, I like that it says that the mind is where the treasure is. You know, it talks about the cerebral cortex and also that third eye, the pineal gland. And the secrets that the pieces of the text we have that it reveals, like how to get past the different levels. Like the higher you go, you have archons that try to stop you, how it says what to say to them. Like, you know, oh, I have you bound. But it's like, well, how do you have me bound? How am I bound? Nothing has bound me. Like, I like that. I love it.
Oh yeah, indeed. It's in the Gospel of Judas, though, dude. It's so dark. I mean, it doesn't even really have a happy ending. Jesus just says, "I'm out of here. This world's screwed." So, but I guess he tells the truth. And yeah, the Gospel of Mary is excellent. What figures in the Gnostic myths that speak to you a lot? I mean, like Simon Magus, Mary Magdalene, Judas. Any in particular?
I'm a Mary Magdalene fan though. I like her a lot. She is amazing to me. I feel that she was really one of the most powerful apostles. I think that I don't believe in Jesus per se, but for some reason I want to believe in the apostles. I know it sounds weird. I don't know. I can't explain it myself. But I feel that the apostles represent not only astrology, but also a main 12 who came upon this mystery and it spoke to them in different ways. I think that Mary Magdalene ended up getting a certain interpretation for her. And I believe that it was really powerful and deep. And I also believe that Philip and Thomas got the same thing spiritually. I believe what Peter was taught, he took literal because he was a hothead and uneducated. And that's where the proto-Orthodox church does come from his strain. But yeah, I think Mary Magdalene is the strongest. And I also think the stories and the Da Vinci Code, like her having a kid by Jesus and everything like that, I believe that's just symbolic. I believe that she practiced a living embodiment of the true Christ divinity within teachings. And that's the symbolism that she had a daughter. I believe that she might have possibly wrote her stuff down and she passed it on, you know, through that actual written documents, or the strongest, most powerful teaching, the true teaching, that she passed it on. And that's where this family line comes from, that I think that it's a certain group of people. And I believe some of the Bogomils and Cathars may have got a hold of some of this knowledge in France.
Yeah, yeah, all good points for sure. And yeah, I can see, I just popped up the chat room. You got Lawrence Gallian. He's like the polymath of the occult. He knows he's putting up all these cool mythologies from different places in Africa. So, what about in Ifa? Do we have any, you might say, heroic historical figures that are revered?
Shango, the warrior god of politics. He was the first king of Yoruba. And he was the first ruler of the area. Bought all the original laws, everything else. That's the only one I know so far in my studies. Because, like I said, books are really hard to find.
Yeah, even today, yeah, trust me, the truth is still hard to find, and there's a lot of misinformation too out there. So, what about the concept of a demigod? You don't have, you don't have like in our side where Zeus and those are like taking advantage of girls and giving us little half.
Yeah, like Hercules and stuff like that. I mean, I haven't seen any stories. The North African Berber that Hercules did fight, and but this is North African though, not Ifa. I forgot his name. Hercules fought him in Tunisia or Libya, and as long as he was touching the ground, he was unbeatable. So what Hercules did was he lifted him up in the air, and that's how he ended up killing him. He ended up beating him. He would be the example of a demigod in African mythos that we all know, that's well known.
Yeah, indeed. And what about what made you decide to go that route and maybe sort of the ancient Egyptian gods? Because obviously the ancient Egyptians, until the Ptolemies came in, were basically brown-skinned black people. All that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well,
as much.
the Asiatics had already invaded before even the Greeks.
Oh, really?
So there was already an Afro-Asiatic mixing in northern Egypt, which is Lower Egypt, because when they came, they would just take the major cities where the pyramids are, and a lot of the Nubians, the Kemites, the real Egyptians that were darker and African would go south to Upper Egypt. And pretty much the Asiatic fathers would take Nubian dark-skinned mothers. And at this time, Egypt, Northern Sudan, Somalia, and Ethiopia were all one country. It was really just Kemet, Kush, Kemet, Kemet and Kush at the time, and Nubia at the time. And what ended up happening was these Asiatic men would take on African wives, but when they would take them, start families with them, the kids would take the teachings of the father, because the Asiatics had a male-dominated kind of culture, which also the Greeks adopted from them, the Phoenicians and all them. So there became an Afro-Asiatic race of people, and they were already brown skin or mixed looking, half Semitic, half African. Basically, if you today, if you've seen half black, half Greek, or half black, half Turkish, they look like that. And when the Ptolemies came, this is what they encountered, that kind of split. And so, of course, then Greeks came, and then the Romans came, and that brought Italians and Frenchmen and Germans, and so now you have a diverse Egypt.
Yeah. Everybody throughout history wants a piece of Egypt, as they say. I mean, some people talk it's the grain in the Nile, but true, they wanted the mysteries. They wanted something down.
Oh yeah, they wanted the mysteries. Oh yeah,
Plato needed to go to Egypt. The Greek philosophers needed to be initiated in Egypt.
Plato was in Africa for 16 years. Plato was also in Libya and Tunisia, and so was Socrates. Socrates talks in a symposium about an African woman from Thebes teaching him the philosophy of love. Pythagoras went to Africa. He went to Africa as well. He went everywhere though. He learned the Greek philosophies. He learned from Jewish rabbis and from Africans in Egypt. And they didn't even want to take Pythagoras. He got rejected several times, but he was so persistent. One initiator finally took him in. And he got his best teachings from there.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to be somebody back then or throughout history, it's almost like you have to have Egypt. Alexander the Great had to have Egypt. I think Napoleon had to have. If you want some sort of power, mystical power, intellectual power, it seemed Egypt was the place you needed to invade. So
that's the very first spiritual spot. That's where universities was invented. We wouldn't have colleges if it wasn't for Egypt. We wouldn't have any religion if it wasn't for Egypt. The Nile Valley it's something about it. It's almost like the first celestial beings obviously must have came there first. And when they ran into the early humans, they must have taught them everything right there. If you want to believe that we get everything from up above. And I think that's just me. I'm not saying this is an actual fact, but from my opinion, I believe that's why Egypt is so important. I believe that's where the first celestial beings came down and started teaching the mysteries at.
Yeah, I think that's a good case. Whatever you think the celestial beings are, what do you think, Nate? What's your take on Egypt, or do you have a question?
All right, I guess I'll answer that in two parts. To jump back to the book, I have a book that I'd like to share. You get this through Scarlet Imprint. It's Ifa, Forest of Mystery, and I think that might be helpful for people who are interested in learning a little more about this. As far as the Nile goes, I know that's supposed to be a mirror of the Milky Way, or there's some connections between that and the Milky Way. I think about how even just earlier today, I was reading about the importance of the originality of how, and I think it was actually in this book talking about how spirits ascend into these Milky Way bodies, and that's what the human form is. So if the Nile is a representative of the Milky Way, and there's some cosmic origins connected to there, I can link that with the very first teachings of its cosmic origins. And actually, synchronistically enough, this is just a personal sync. I learned that I was going over my family history with a cousin of mine, and apparently he said, "We are sons of the Niles." And I mean, that's a family name, but synchronicity is synchronicity. The only other thing I'd add to this is maybe we could talk a bit about the Dogon tribe or some of the celestial visitors that are known to have come through there, the Nomo and stuff like that. That's what I have to say for now. This is wicked fascinating. I love this.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah, if Sam wants to talk about the Dogons, if not, somebody else take it on. It's
I
insanely.
heard that they say that fish head gods came and taught them about Sirius and the stars around it and how the Sirius system is. And according to astronomers, they're really accurate. And they knew this centuries before there was any telescopes or anything. So I believe it. Why not? And also Gnostic teachings say that the archons had the faces of beasts, bodies of men. I believe it.
Interesting. And the Dogon tribe, it just blows me away. And Vance, do you have a question for Sam or any questions from the chat room?
Yeah, we got chat room questions. Someone wanted to know what the name of quote unquote Africa was prior to its being named Africa. Was there another name?
Yeah, I said it wrong. It's all seeing activity. He was right. It's called Alkel Bulan. I said Akadama. Yeah, I was mistaken. He was right.
Okay. Also, giant stories. Were there any giant stories? Giants.
Oh, yeah.
Lore.
Yeah, there is a lot of giant stories actually from my studies now. There's a lot of giants. There's a lot of the stories involve animals though, but there is giants. Yeah.
Do they have like giant beings, coming into and invading and mating with the people that were there, like in the Bible?
I'm reading one story. I read one story where it had that there was a giant in this house, and he used to feed this one person, and it's mostly about like giants kind of playing tricks or giants kind of telling you to do something specifically, and then as soon as you and they'll give you rewards for it, but as soon as you mess up because of human curiosity, they snatch it away from you and then they disappear themselves.
Also, distant god. Someone wants to know about the distant god in a lot of the African myths. That familiar?
Which god?
The quote unquote distant god.
I never heard of it.
I mean, it's
I will look into it though.
God. I mean, how do the creator gods work in these myths? Like
the creator gods mostly work according to the myths. They mostly work. They're in the clouds, and they usually use animals and mud or dirt to create their first human beings. In Egypt, it was Ptah. They say that he used clay and forged just like pottery from clay and made the first humans like that. And that's also talked about in the Old Testament in the Bible. So that's really mostly a lot of times what it is. The creator God is looked at as a craftsman or doing something to the effect of a craftsman and making us. And there's always animals involved.
And that's true, but I know the gods usually, are they humanoid? I mean, I know, for example, the Greeks and the Romans hated beast-headed gods, while the Egyptians did. Of course, they were all symbolical, like, Hathor was a bull, a cow, and so forth. And every god had, are the gods usually humanoid or beast features? How are they depicted?
The Orishas are human, but they do have sacred animals. Egypt mostly had the human heads. In Voodoo, you find a lot of them are human, and you have one Voodoo god like the Gorilla King. He's actually a gorilla. Voodoo is mixed. Egypt, it's a fusion, and Ifa is more of human, but with sacred animals. So it's kind of more like the Greeks probably more took from that, from the Ifa system, and as well as Egypt. But also, even in the Greek myths, you still have certain animals like Hades had Cerberus. Zeus had the eagle. Athena had the owl. You know, basically you have a sacred animal. Animals are involved somewhere.
They're definitely always part of the mythology, and indeed, this is really interesting. And what about Voodoo? Could you tell maybe the audience about that, or do you practice, or what do you feel about this strain?
I don't really practice voodoo, and I do respect it. I mean, of course, you know, the racist time of the 1930s, they taught blacks to fear voodoo and said it was from the devil. So a lot of black people are scared of voodoo. When I learned about it, I was not scared. I realized it was nature and that it was actually just part of life. It was, you know, universal forces itself. I don't practice it because I couldn't connect to it. I connected to EFI, and I went to when I first got into EFI, I went to an actual priestess, but we ended up falling out. And but she did tell me something. She said spiritualities from Africa are up to your ancestral line, and if they line up with your ancestral line, you know that's what you should go with. So I just leave voodoo alone because I couldn't plug to it or connect to it. I do respect it highly, but I don't, you know, I don't connect to it, so I leave it alone.
And you talk about ancestors, and I feel that's something I've tried to connect more with because in the ancient religions, you're supposed to be connected to your I mean, you see this in
Yeah.
Asia, the Middle East, and so forth. Like when I go to bed, I try to ask for wisdom and answers to all my ancestors, wherever they may be, although they live through me in some way or another. And I try to ask, and it's really helped my spirituality. So, and you find all that, is that something you do? Venerate to the ancestors, try to talk to them and all that?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. That is really when Europeans came there and saw this, they called it animism. Um, I don't like to say that because, like I said, it doesn't come from us, but it's pretty much that's the simple basics of African spirituality. That is the very core is that, you know, the ancestors. You look to them for guidance. You know, they are like your spirit guides, as Sandra Brown tried to push when she was living. Um, so that was typical. That was an everyday thing. You know, when you would get up before you would do your work, go hunting or whatever, you would actually be like, okay, yeah, I need you know, I want the ancestors to give me a fair catch if you're a fisherman, or I want the ancestors to let me get a good game if you're a hunter. Or, you know, if I'm working the fields, I want the crops to come in good. I want to get a good basket full, you know, before I go back in the house. You always want that, you know, when people say that they hear these voices tell them, you know, hey, you want to turn left and not turn right. You want to go down this street and not that street. You know, Christians will say it's the Holy Spirit. You know, we just believe that is the ancestors. So that was the very beginning. That was like the normal, everyday basic.
Yeah, indeed, or it's your intuition and all that
Yeah.
good stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
So
think I'm.
Lawrence has a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it common in African religions for people to become possessed or ridden by the gods?
Yeah, for Voodoo, yes, it is. Especially the
Ah,
god Comey, I think that's his name. Yeah, they do a ritual in Benin. I saw it on the Dark Tourism show on Netflix. And they do a ritual for him. And when they do the ritual, it's like a lot of dancing, and a lot of them will cut themselves and stuff like that. And they say that when they have they do a ritual with like chicken blood and stuff like that, when they rub it on themselves, and the priestess or the priest does the incantation, that they are now possessed by Comey at that point. So yeah, for Voodoo, it is very common. Also in E5, there's a video on YouTube about a Christian pastor, and a woman in the church became possessed by Oshun, and she approached him and said, you know, why are you taking my kings and queens from me? And when he tried to touch her head and I guess rebuke her in the name of Jesus, he said, oh no, don't touch my crown. You know, but he was like, who are you? And she was like, I am Oshun, and why are you taking my kings and queens? So yeah, that does exist. It's true. And it's the same thing with the oracle at Delphi in Greece. You know, she was believed to be taken by Apollo, and the other oracles in the three other spots
sure.
were taken by the god or goddess of that area. Either Zeus had an oracle, you know, even Poseidon had an oracle.
Well, even in Christianity, when you have communion, I mean, when I remember when I was a kid, they, taught you're supposed to be possessed by Jesus, spirit of
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. So maybe that's like a little bit of a kind of attenuated possession.
the enthusiasm of the Greeks or whatever, being possessed by a god. And what do you think of this, Sam? I mean, one thing that's happening too is that at least here in North America and Europe is Christianity sort of going to the twilight and ancestral religions are growing. But at the
Mhm.
same time in Africa, Christianity is exploding too. It's been very successful. I know like in Nigeria, you got huge Anglican, but you do have Christianity exploding in Africa, but it is sort of fusing in with tribal
African spirituality. It is a
religion.
lot of priests. A lot of priests, even in Ghana, were still practicing African spirit, their spirituality behind the scenes. They were only really being Christian pastors in the public, but in their houses, they got shrines to the old gods. They're practicing their own spirituality. Um, Pretty much like a lot of Africans, their minds are liberating, and due to politics and everything else, and also with colonialism disappearing, they're starting to come back, to their true selves. But a lot of them have been Christians for so long, or also they may have felt that they've had miracles in their life, or it has worked out for them in some kind of way. So there is a fusion. They also don't want to have the whole tribe or the whole village or their whole community kind of turn against them or bring division. So it's easier to infuse things rather than see it all fall apart. Rome did the same thing when the Christianity was legalized. The Catholics did the same thing. They took all the paganisms and infused it. They had a twin cult in Spain. So what did they turn that into? They said, okay, well, it's Jesus and his brother James. The Gnostics in that area obviously took it as Jesus and Thomas, Didymus Thomas, the twin, and it was an infusion. Hermes became Gabriel. Ares became the Archangel Michael. I mean, that's all it really is. We were pouring out the Greeks and people in the Roman world were pouring out drink libations to Zeus and everybody else. Now you do communion. You used to be able to eat from the body of Mithras and drink from his blood, the holy blood of the Son, and now it's the holy blood of Jesus, the light of the world, with the same solar deity titles. So I feel it. I understand it. If you an African preacher of Christianity, I get it. If you want to kind of win over the guys who are still doing the traditional practices, why not fuse it together? Bring your community together, show some unity rather than destruction of the several civil wars that have happened.
Very true. And what about the issue that I've read, and of course you could probably clarify more since you probably would understand, but there seems to be, at least you hear it in the media. I'm always suspicious of any narrative I hear.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of stories about women being burned as witches and so forth in Africa. Have you heard of this? And what do you think is the issue? I mean, is there some confusion? Is Christianity and paganism moving too fused and not really catching on? Because obviously the religions are very maternal, and the religions of fertility and more equality.
A lot of a unity, because even the Ankh is a symbol of male and female unity. So in African spirituality, there never was no patriarchy or a matriarchy. We understood that we worked one and the same. I haven't heard about the women being burned as witches, but I can believe it. I can believe that it is happening, because I have heard about how there's a lot of Africans that are super Muslim and super Christian. So I can believe it. I don't doubt it at all. Matter of fact, there's a story in Ifa. My friend that's an Awo priest was telling me in Yoruba in Nigeria they call Muslims Imali, because it's Mali, Africa, where they encountered Muslims from first, was Malis that had traveled to Yoruba. And they one story goes, Rumula was talking to them, and they were saying, oh, well, we fast for Allah. And Rumula basically called him a liar. He said, no, you do not fast for Allah. You do not fast, in Ifa we call the Holy Father of all, Allah Dumare. You do not fast for Allah Dumare, not even Obatala. You fast for yourself. Pretty much you called him a liar, like you're not doing all this work that you're talking about. You're not fasting, you're not doing your sadats and all of this stuff, praying 5 times a day and all that. No, you're not doing it for your God. No, you're doing it for yourself. pretty much in the Bible, how it talks about showing out, how men will fast in public and mess their face up to be seen by other men. That basically that's what they're doing, you know. Even and I'm not bashing Muslims at all. I got Muslim friends that I'm very close to that I've known for years, that I love on everything. But I have noticed that even in their rituals, that it's not really it's stuff that would be private in Christianity, they do publicly and out loud. Like they recite the Quran, they do their prayers outside, and they have loudspeakers and everything else. So I believe in this myth. Of course, that certain African tribes would see that and be like, okay, yeah, you putting on display, you putting on the show. You're not doing this for God, you're doing this for yourself. Oh, I prayed 5 times a day. I did my sadats, Nahamdu Allah, Allahu Akbar. I feel good about myself. Allah doesn't need you to feel good about yourself. You need to feel good about yourself. Very ego-driven type of thing in a system that they noticed.
Right. It's kind of like in Matthew 7 where he says, "Go pray in a room by yourself. Don't show off the world." And it is fascinating because speaking of Islam, and again, we're talking about how Christianity even now is fusing again in Africa and Islam too. I remember my dad, he did some work in Nigeria, and he remembers being stuck in rush hour. And in between the two lanes of cars, he saw this really tall, 7-foot tall dude with the the long hair. He was completely naked, and he was completely with the white powder from dreadlocks and powder covered, and he's just chanting, and everybody's just looking, nobody was going to mess with this guy because he was a holy man. He was, even though he was a mullah, he was kind of a shaman / Muslim. He was the perfect fusion, and in there in Nigeria, this guy was. He was the thing. Nobody was going to screw with him, and he was an important guy. So it's fascinating how Islam also likes to change depending on country.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, of course. And I mean, I like that. Even if you look at how Turkey was secular. I watched this documentary years ago. It was a Turkish woman. She was going to like Iraq and Iran and talking with them. And I guess they had more of a stricter, kind of Islam, like with Sharia law and stuff like that. So she had her job, but not a burqa. She just had her hair covered, and that was it. She wore like modest, regular clothes and everything else. So she walked up on this little boy who was making prayer rugs. That was his job. And she asked him, she said, this little boy is like 8 or 9 years old. She's like, oh, is my outfit acceptable? And he was like, no, no, not at all. For his form of Islam, it was Sharia law, real strict. You followed the Quran to a T. And what she was doing was absolutely wrong, just for how she was dressed, and then it's a little boy doing this, So I do see the difference, between they were both Muslim, but where she comes from, it's a little more secular, a little more freer. They're not really tripping about all that. But where this little boy was from and where she was interviewing him at, that was a no-go. You know what I'm saying? And it was very strict. And his Islam was, way different from hers.
Yeah, well, very much. Is like some of my best. In fact, my soulmate, my best friend in the world, was Pakistani. Rest his soul. And he would tell me in Pakistan, you do worship the saints at the graveyard, and you can't sing. Who's the guy who did that great singer? His last name was Khan, and he did the Passion of the Christ soundtrack and all that. So yes, singing is very important for Muslims in Pakistan. You're supposed, where obviously in Saudi Arabia and other places you ain't gonna sing. So things really do change depending. And again, I think all these religions still hearken to the old ancient pagan religions. They sort of adopt and change things around.
Yeah.
And what about you, Vance? Any questions from the audience, or do you have a question, Vance?
I'm so busy trying to keep up with everybody else's questions. I could hardly follow the rest of it.
Moby, he seems to know his stuff, and he has a lot of questions.
I know that we have a lot of informed people in the audience tonight. So one that picked, that caught my eye was that Isu and the Tricksters. I love trickster stories. So,
Mhm.
Sam, what can you tell us about Isu and the Tricksters?
From what I do know about him, um, he um he is the trickster god. His colors is red and black. They say that he like follows around kids and stuff like that. Like I really haven't studied that deeply on him. I've been focused on Oya Maorisha, so I don't know too much about him, and I don't want to tell no lies or no false truths or say something about
Oh no,
talk about what I don't
that's
know.
cool. We got
Mhm,
plenty other things. How about this
mhm.
one? Role of initiation in African spiritual systems or training. What kind of
Oh, okay.
initiations they
I
have?
can't answer that. I can't answer that. Initiations, I feel, are for those who, if you feel that it's necessary, yeah, you should go do that. For me, I feel that I don't. I feel that I have my initiation spiritually. I don't need a priest or a priestess to come do my initiation. Um, but I don't knock anybody that does. I feel that those traditions are kind of outdated. But at the same time, I do feel that some people are called to do these initiations. Some people feel in their heart they have to. So if you do feel that way, go ahead and do it. I'm not going to knock you. I'm not going to talk bad about you or think any less of you. No, go ahead and do it. By all means, one of my closest friends that I first met moving up here is an Awo priest. We've had this discussion. Um, I feel that as we evolve, the Orishas evolve. Like I said, I fell out with that female priestess when I first came to E5 because she was telling me some stuff that I couldn't believe, that Ogun was evil and Oya was evil. And I'm just like, wait a minute, hold on, none of the Orishas are evil. And she says she then got cussed out by people who they've told her their Orisha experience. And because it didn't fall in line with what she sees as canon or what she was taught as canon or what she knows, that she told them that they were being talked to by deceiving spirits, and these people would get mad and cuss her out and stuff like that. So as we evolve, the Orishas evolve. We blacks in America, we've been Christian and Muslim for over 400 years. We don't know anything about our original spirituality. We're not like the black people that's in South America or the Caribbean who mixed it and created Santeria. They mixed it with the Catholic Church and created something else, but which is still basically Ifa, but to keep it from the slave master, mixed it with Catholicism, but they still held on to that identity. We blacks in America, for whatever reason, we didn't do that. We instantly became Christian. We right away. It was beaten into us. This is what we took. So the Orishas obviously will know that this is what happened. They will know that this was the process, and we don't have the mind or the know-how of these initiations, because all we've known is Christianity. And some of us during the 50s, 60s, and 70s went over to Islam. So that's what we know. The Orishas are going to come at us and initiate us basically from what we know. They're not going to come to us, all of us, in a way that's traditional from Yoruba, Nigeria, because we don't necessarily know that. We know how to be blacks in America. We don't know how to actually be an African in Africa. So that's my answer to that, to initiations. I believe that for us, it's going to happen different, and it's going to happen at the mentality and the mental capacity of where we are. And that's how it's worked for me.
Do you think that makes Gnosticism a good stepping stone from that original state? From the adoption of Christianity and Islam, whatever, the spiritual independence, so to speak.
I mean, I think so. But I think that also you shouldn't be caught up in it. I mean, like I said, we got all this information and evidence now. We know Christianity for what it really is. We know the real reasons why Rome molded it into the Christianity it is today, that it was political, it was to keep better control of the minds of a public people. Islam, I do some research. I have been researching a little bit more. And from what I can tell, I think it was 200 years after Muhammad had died before they even wrote the Quran. I mean, I think that Muhammad had a truly Gnostic experience, but I think that a lot of Gnostics that crossed over the Roman lines into Saudi Arabia, that their knowledge was taken by the Saudi government at the time and mixed with what Muhammad's revelations to create Islam. I don't believe that the Islam of today is authentic. I believe that if Muhammad was alive, he wouldn't approve of what he's seeing today. The same way, for the sake of an argument, if Jesus was around, he wouldn't approve of what Christianity is today. I believe both men would be utterly disgusted at what has become of their teachings and the perversion.
Oh, I agree with you. I've always thought, looking at what I've researched, I think Muhammad was probably some sort of a mystical Jew hybrid who was practicing mystical experience in the desert. And of course, somebody gets that formula and it's like, man, we're going to weaponize this stuff. We're going to package it, because when you get the secrets that are so powerful, you can use those secrets against the population, whether you're using it. Again, look at Egypt. People needed those secrets so they could weaponize the West. So I think we get it. What do you think? Maybe you could be at a disadvantage because, after all, unlike the Gnostics and other groups, Christianity and Islam are, you might say, evangelical. They're missionary. Part of you being a Christian, you got to spread that religion to others. Sometimes it's by hook, by crook. Is Ifa? And Ifa is not that way, right? It's not missionary.
No, it isn't. And that's one thing I can say. As a Gnostic Christian, I felt like I had to tell people the truth. Oh, this Roman voted together bullshit is a lie. Stop being a fundamentalist. Come over to the Gnostic side. They're the real Christians. The second I came to Ifa, when I had that experience with Oshun, I have not felt the desire one time, and I've been on this for 3 years, since I was 30 when this experience happened. I'm 33 now. I have not felt one time that I need to run and tell everybody that Ifa is the way. What I do say, and you'll see this on my Facebook post and everything, what I do be saying is, Black people, we need to come to our original spirituality. We need to drop Islam, drop Christianity, and come back home. Whether it be Ifa, Voodoo, Kemet, one of the other tribes, and because different tribes believe different things, one of the other tribes, studying them and following their path. We need to do it immediately. You know, we can't. To me, it's going back to the plantation of work and sneaking out at night to say that you on your Black power shit and you woke, but you still believe in Jesus. To me, that's fake shit. That's basically like, okay, I'm gonna pick cotton massa, but at night I'm gonna sneak out and be with Harriet Tubman and the escaped slaves. It's pretty much that's what it is.
And you'll be happy or something like that, right?
Exactly. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna stay up all night with the free ones, boss, but I'll be back in the morning to pick the cotton. To me, or hold on, Christianity, I'll be back Sunday, to pick my cotton, boss. And I can't. Nah, I can't go for it. A lot of Black people get mad at me. Oh well, what you're saying is hurtful, and this is. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. This was forced upon us. There was never a Bible in a Black family before slavery, and that's just real shit.
Very true. Yeah, you're talking about Harriet Tubman. I think she's fascinating because did you know that most of what she got was through dreams and visions, all the routes and paths and all that. She was a full-blown powerful mystic. She was quite a woman.
That's cool.
And what would you say is the role of magic in Ifa, or even the role of magic in your life?
The role of magic in my life, I feel that as soon as I came to Ifa, like my life, like I said, homeless as a teenager, just all kinds of shit. Like one of the reasons why I'm not a Christian, one of my 3 reasons, a lot of disappointment, unanswered prayers. When I came to E5 and I started working with the Orishas, and I don't ask them for anything, much. I just ask them for guidance because I know that they don't like that, to be asked, for stuff all the time. But I have felt things get better, even though, my divorce and everything else and all of that, still stuff has gotten better. Like I wasn't down and out. Stuff has continually gotten better. And I know for a fact that had I would have stayed with Christianity, it'd have just been a repeat of the same thing. I would have been falling on my knees, begging in the name of Jesus, what I was taught by my mom, may she rest with the ancestors, just to get bullshit back, just for the demiurge to just spit in my face and laugh again for the millionth time. So, no, since I rejected him and rejected any teachings that he got shit to do with, everything has gotten better. So to me, that's magic working in my life. You know, and also Oya is the mother of the craft and the occult, as well as a warrior goddess and goddess of storms. She's had my back 1,000 since then.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think, again, I go back to my godmother, and
Mm-hmm.
I think about it, her casting those spells, and sometimes it would go to her head because she would cast spells on people she didn't like. And I think that stuff, there was a lot of blowback in her life and a lot of darkness, only until she finally got rid of that, you know, again, for the wrong reasons, that things get better in her life. And yeah, rest her soul too. I do miss my godmother and so forth. So Nate, I've never seen you this quiet in my life. I mean, this is like, you're listening. Tell us something.
You really know how to flatter a guy, Miguel. I'll tell you this.
Tom Brady. Tell us about that statue of Tom Brady you're worshiping.
Oh my God.
The goat statue? I can't tell you about the goat statue.
Goat statue. Well, you need to knock that shit down.
And it's interesting, Sam.
It just got 6 times taller when you said that.
Oh,
I think you're feeding it. Oh, yeah, you're getting that blowback. Well, actually, before when I've been having a lot of synchronicity with this book while we're going through. When you mentioned, I might not say this right, just bear with me. A quick thing, if you don't mind, about Isu.
Yeah.
And this is when you started. When Sam starts to talk, when you start to talk about Isu, this page literally pops right up. You know how that goes. So I'm gonna read this right quick. And then maybe later at the end, I do have a cool page to read. But right now, Isu, this is called the Crossroads of Confusion, and I think this might clear up a little. I don't know. Here it is. Isu, the time of me being quiet is over. Isu, the loyal companion of Orunmila, is the most complex and mysterious of deities. He is simultaneously the youngest and the oldest. He deliberately plays with gender roles and fiercely attacks any attempt to establish dogmas. The missionaries, and later Johnson, saw in this being the image of the devil, and he became associated with misfortune and all kinds of evil. Isu is a trickster, but the mischief he causes is an effect of his presence as the power of chance, movement, and transformation. When Isu is seen in the image of devils and demons, it might suggest that opportunities have slipped by. The name Isu can be split into 2 phonemes. E, denoting something expressive, and Su, to make something spherical. If the accent is changed, we find the principle of darkening that lies at the root of Subu, to collapse, or bring something to fall. And if Isu can be understood as the expressive power of the spheres, he is indeed the Lord of the worlds, and a metaphysical principle no different to Ibn Arabi's understanding of Iblis as the one who defines the limits of each circle of creative expression. Some have even used the second phoneme to ascribe his origin to the Egyptian deity Shu, and locate him as migrating from the upper east of Africa to the southwest.
You want Sam to comment on this?
Yeah, I like that.
I'm just going to be quiet now.
But I had said that earlier, that I knew that they said he was like the devil when European explorers got there, and they said, "Oh, it's the devil." And also Egypt. I've heard this theory before too, that it is folks from Kemet that migrated down into the Yoruba lands, and of course the gods adopted to the different cultures and different tribes that collided with the Kemites that were there. I do believe this because I also have a book called Destruction of Black Civilization, and it talks about that, how we all started out in Ethiopia, Northern Sudan, and Somalia, and Kemet, and how we dispersed and spread all over the continent. So I do believe that, and plus the similarities is evident. Yeah, I believe it. But I also believe, because Africa is, a female, it is a woman, and it is like the center when all the continents were, when it was Pangea and everything was together. That's the very center. It's the very heart of what we as Gnostics would say lower Sophia herself. It is the very heart of Sophia herself, the very heart of Mother Earth. And that's why Voodoo has so many gods, and also, the Orishas and Kemet. But you'll have a different experience with sorry, I said that wrong. The Orishas and Yoruba, but you'll have a different experience if, with Kemet or with different individual tribes, have their own celestial beings and deities, because it's the birthplace of everything. It's the center of everything, the heart of everything. It all goes back to there. All roads don't really lead to Rome, they lead back to Africa.
Sooner or later, man. Sooner or later. So, and what do you think of? Have you ever been attracted to any form of Freemasonry, like Prince Hall Freemasonry?
I thought about it. I've considered it, but I just haven't done it. I used to work where I work at. My first job when I got up here to the Seattle Tacoma area was right down the street from a Prince Hall Lodge, and I've considered it over the years, but I haven't made my decision. I mean, where my life's going right now, I'm thinking about it, but I kind of don't have time. My fiance is really entrepreneurial and wants to start businesses, and I have books I'm writing, so I'm really busy. So to have to go to lodge meetings and things like that would kind of interfere with all that. So we'll see.
If I could say something quickly, I put this one on for this evening. I know the listener can't see this, but my lodges has the Eye of Horus there as our logo. So yeah, I'm a Freemason, and I would just simply say you're only going to have to go to about one lodge meeting a month, and there's, when you're first starting off, maybe two. But if you're writing a book and your wife is an entrepreneur, I think you know what you're going to do. That's just what I'm saying. This one.
She one of her I think she said her aunt or her kid's grandma is an Eastern Star. She's very high ranking, so she says she was thinking about getting initiated through her if she does it. So if she does it, I guess I'll do it. I'll go for it.
These are definitely complementary systems, not antagonistic. You feel me?
Yeah, like I said, when I used to get into Illuminati conspiracy theories, I believed it was all evil, but it's
as Miguel will tell you, I'm obviously trying to take over the world. So you and me can get into cahoots after this. You know what I mean? I'm just saying.
I get thinking.
The Patriots gotta go though. The Patriots gotta go. We take over the world.
When you find out, you're gonna find out why you want the Patriots to stay.
No, never. The Celtics gotta go too, and the Lakers gotta win every championship for the next 5 years. We take over the world. That's how it's gonna go.
Maybe we can talk about that later.
Well, that's interesting. And on a lighter note, as we get towards the end of a lighter note. I mean, I think it's lighter. We've been talking some heavy duty stuff, but you talk about conspiracy, Sam. Is there any what are some of your favorite conspiracies that you might follow? I mean, obviously, lately I've been sort of into 9/11, Oklahoma City bombing. I think both are staged. I have no doubt. Obviously, Kennedy, a false flag. So, what are some of you think that at the very least, you don't trust the official narrative, just like you don't trust the official narrative of our entire culture?
Yeah, I don't trust 9/11. I've been on that for a while. I don't trust that at all. Like, that looks staged. And then I heard about how the firemen that got there before the second plane hit said that they heard explosions before the second plane hit. Same thing with Hurricane Katrina. When I was hearing about how that there was explosions at the levees, and how the same thing happened to Hurricane Betsy in 1965. Like, I don't believe that. I'm just not buying it that the levees wasn't able to control, the hurricanes. You don't hear about other hurricanes being as bad, but then this Katrina was somehow worse. And then look at how they did the city afterwards. They cleaned up all the poor neighborhoods and said that you got to have money when you come back. Built up all these nice buildings. To me, it was like a setup for gentrification. They just used Mother Nature to do it.
Oh, wow. And who do you think was behind this? I mean,
That's more on the ground. I don't believe that was really archonic from celestial beings. That was more on the ground. That was the straight U.S. government. That was corporations who buy the politicians at these lobbyist meetings. That's what that was.
Right, but I'm talking about
who's behind those,
you don't think it was a federal? Do you think it's just local greed, government Louisiana greed?
Oh yeah, I can take it.
The CIA is coming for him.
Yeah.
We have MK Ultra in the room,
MK Ultra. Oh yeah, we do. I see it. Yeah, I see it. MK Ultra, the mind control for the CIA.
They want to know what you think of Bill Cooper too.
Who is
remember him? All
Who's
right.
Bill Cooper?
Oh, you don't know William Cooper? The Hour of the Time. He used to be on shortwave radio, and he's one of the first conspiracy theorists. But
they killed him.
Yeah, well, but since you haven't heard of him, that's the answer to the question.
Oh, if they killed him, you already know he was telling the truth about some shit. But
he wrote the book "Behold the Pale Horse."
Yeah, they killed Dr. Sebi too, who was teaching health. And he was saying that there was no diseases, only mucus, and you had to control the mucus membrane, and you could control all the sicknesses in the body. They killed him. A black man too teaching that. They killed him. He also taught the healthiest diets to keep yourself in good health and live longer. They bodied him. I'm also into reading about how there was a dude who came up with a cure for AIDS through a healthy actual vegetable fruit diet and certain times to eat it and stuff like that and certain exercises, and that the feds raided his research lab. He had to run down to Brazil. Another man came up with a way to slowly cure cancer through actually a healthier diet and exercise and everything. And he had the same thing. He had set times and what to eat on certain days and certain times and how the exact amounts and stuff like that and how long it would take. And they did the same thing, that the feds kicked in his door and took his shit and everything else, and he had to flee the country. I don't doubt these things. I don't think that those things are a lie. I believe it's true.
Well, overpopulation is a big problem for the elite. They want to pare everybody down. So,
oh yeah, of course.
Georgia Guidestones.
Have you read that article about how Bill Gates won't get his kids vaccinated? Like the top 3% of people. Wait, let me do it like that just to freak people out. The top 3% of people will not get their kids vaccinated, but like it's good for the rest. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, it makes sense because there's risk to vaccinations. Everybody knows that, no matter what you think of.
When I got a vaccination when I was a kid, I went into a seizure and my mom stopped giving me them. But yeah, I mean, that's just personal stuff too. But yeah, it's not good.
It's the same thing with if you look at it's the same shit when you look at Bill Gates, how when that Ebola broke out, you notice that I watched on Vice News, and this one African doctor said that there was none of that stuff. Ebola had never been heard of in over almost 20 some years until Bill Gates's vaccines had came. And once his vaccines came there, and then I seen the YouTube clip where he was at TED talking about how to control the population and using vaccines to do it. Then they got to go to Africa. They got to fuck with black people first.
Well, that's like the Tuskegee experiments, right? They had Bill Clinton apologizing for those. Apologizing for MK Ultra.
With syphilis.
There's another one. Of course, like I mentioned, introducing crack cocaine. So the CIA would sell that so they could fund their wars in Central America. It's just over.
That's what that show Snowfall's about. Yeah. That's what that show Snowfall's about.
You guys know Wilhelm Reich too. I mean, it's not just. I like to think that it's not just one group of people or any group. Like Wilhelm Reich was a Jew, and they threw him in jail for talking about how we can use our sexual energy, the subtle energy, to heal ourselves, to be in greater communion, to be a greater peace, to be more creative. If
you say anything that's going to help out mankind for the better, regardless of your race or whatever, they're going to try to destroy you. Oh yeah.
Well, don't tell me that because I don't want to give up quite yet.
Well, I mean, if you're really influential, I mean, look at why they killed Malcolm X. Look at why they killed Martin Luther King, because they was talking the truth. Like, this is something I say all the time. Martin Luther King is dead because of the "I Have a Dream" speech. Now, you notice when they play it back, it's a 47-minute speech. They only play the first 7 minutes. They don't play the last 40 minutes when he was telling black people that to invest in black banks and buy black insurance company and black insurance companies and basically keep our money within ourselves.
Yeah.
That's what they shot him for. That's why he's dead, because of the last 40 minutes of that speech. He didn't get killed because he was peaceful the first 7 minutes. He got killed for the last 40 minutes of that speech.
I thought it was because he went against the Vietnam War, and then the war machinery in this country can't handle a leader being anti-war.
Well, that was why the FBI was on his head. That was one of the extra reasons for them to step up surveillance on him. He really died because even now, black people generate $1 trillion every year. Only 2% of it comes back to us because we're the only racial group that don't practice group economics. Latinos practice it very well. Asians, Jews, they practice it very well. White people, of course. So it's we generate more money than anybody else. You have to keep us in a state of confusion. Martin Luther King was breaking that confusion. It wasn't even $1 trillion in the 60s. We was generating some billions in the 60s, which was still more than everybody else. And a lot of it wasn't coming back to us, even though we did have more black businesses back then. But what was ended up happening was a lot of those black businesses were disappearing by the late 60s and early 70s. Martin Luther King saw this happening, as well as Malcolm X saw it happening and talked about it. And that's why they're dead, because of that money. That money also gets paid in taxes. And like I said, these corporations got to make money. So who are they going to make money off of but the biggest consumers, which sadly to say is us blacks. So, of course, you have the corporations at the lobbyist meetings talking to the politicians, and then you have the politicians talking to CIA agents. What do you think is going to happen? That's why both of them men are dead. That's the real reason why they dead.
I thought Malcolm X was killed by somebody in the Nation of Islam because he was making too much noise.
They came together for that. They had police issue weapons. You know, that was the CIA and the Nation of Islam. Basically, what that was CIA just met with Elijah Muhammad and said, okay, look, he's getting on y'all nerves, he's getting on our nerves. You know, we got to do something. We'll give you weapons, y'all do the hit. That's what happened. Because Malcolm X was also poisoned in Egypt before he was shot. He was poisoned in Egypt. And Farrakhan and Elijah Muhammad ain't got that kind of power. Only the CIA got that kind of power. How are you eating at a restaurant in Egypt and you get poisoned? You know, he threw up the poison though, and he didn't kill him. But if you watch the movie that Spike Lee made, who was following him around? The CIA was. They were the only people who could have poisoned his food.
Alan Dulles and JFK there, right?
JFK too. JFK was exposing a lot of stuff. You know, he was exposing. I think that's why JFK gets killed when I study him, because he was talking the truth about a lot of things. You know, he wanted a transparent government. That's why they killed him. To me,
have you heard the theory Dark Journalist talks about that he got from a friend of what was it? The name slips my mind, but basically he was talking about UFO disclosure. That's the reason that's one reason they said he was killed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It could be. He wanted to end Vietnam. That's check mark 1. Possibly UFOs, check mark 2. The money. He wanted to get the money free from the Fed. Check mark, I mean, 3 strikes, right?
Oh yeah, of course. There's a lot of things about Kennedy. I mean, I know in his personal life he was doing some shit, but I'm sorry, when it came to leading the nation, he did his thing. Like you know what I'm saying? He to me, he was the best president this country has had.
One of them for sure. I think.
Just had one to go that. And do you think it's interesting? And I know I always, even though most people don't like him, especially people in the occult, but I do think he's a brilliant thinker. I think he just got lost in his way, but I think his thinking and in ways inspiring. But most people don't know that St. Augustine was black.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I knew Tertullian was black and Arius was black.
You're right.
Yeah,
Wow.
Tertullian was black and Arius was black. I knew that they were. I didn't know St. Augustine was.
Yeah,
That's
because
cool.
I think they have traced to where his clan was in that part of Africa. Certainly
Mhm.
was, you might say, a black part of where it was. So
Yeah. So he was a Berber. Okay. Cool.
I think that's it's
Um,
interesting to know.
I can't stand
there,
Tertullian, You've seen my Facebook post.
Well, he's Tertullian. Yeah. I mean, hey,
He one of us. He was one of us, but
yeah,
no.
there's jerks everywhere. There's jerks everywhere. So it
That
is.
whole closed-minded mentality fundamentalist Christians have come from his ass. No.
Yeah, he and Irenaeus in that gang.
Him and
if it's cool with you guys, I'd love to read a page from this the Cosmology of Ifa, if
Yeah,
that's all right.
let's end the interview with that.
I,
Let's go for
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, I figure people would get something out of this. It's going to take me a minute to read the page, but just bear with me. The Cosmology expounded in Ifa, or okay, I'm just going to say it because I'm not getting it right. And Ifa is cyclical. Further, Ifa invites comparison with Pythagorean ideas.
Mm.
Viewing forgive me, I'm just going to say it last time I'm going to say it, forgive me. Viewing Ia or Earth as a body surrounding a central fire. If we go deeper into the metaphysics of Ifa, we find geocentric and heliocentric, Ptolemaic and Copernican similarities, and even ideas similar to Al-Razi's theories of the universe, while Boethius, Plotinus, and Bruno have been mentioned as references for understanding Ifa cosmology. We can loosely define Ifa as a noetic consensus reality, and thus essentially a timeless philosophy. Metaphysically speaking, Ifa sees the invisible and visible realms as categories in constant interaction. Any number of worlds or realms can meet and interact, and our own IA is one of many possible worlds. Just like any other world, IA is endowed with a divine, immutable spirit, which gives it life in a unique form, rhythm, and perfection. Every planet and every stellar body in our universe is inhabited by a spirit with a particular consciousness. In the case of Venus, it is a spirit called Aguala. The sun is inhabited by the spirit called Amoka, and Sirius, the canoe star, is the dwelling of the spirit Irawo Ale. These ideas are not far from those which we find in Leibniz's theory of the monads. I can
like
finish
that.
the rest of the.
Yo, go
Sorry,
ahead. Keep reading. Keep reading.
Man, this is good.
I'll finish the page at least. Yeah, Ifa holds that the beginning of everything is rooted in the presence of a mysterious light that began to move, and as it contracted and expanded, generated a variety of light forms. All of the rays that rose from the explosions caused by the pulse of light became conscious of its ray as their source. Hence, the beginning of everything was an explosion of light. The director of the explosion was the intelligence inhabited by the primordial mysterious light, which we call Olodumare, a name by which in its fullness means owner of the rainbow snakes that rose from the womb, but who is usually referred to as the owner of heaven. We, if we pursue the symbolism of serpents rising from a womb, we find that snakes represent primordial rays of being rising from the igma, it's very hard, Igbamole, igbalmole, the calabash of light. And for people who don't know what calabashes are, they're a type of gourd. I just learned that. So, like, we have the primordial egg in Gnosticism, we got the calabash in Ifa. I'll finish the idea. It says, so from the calabash of light, this can be seen in the creator spirit Obatala, who has the python Ere as one of his attributes. The python is associated with the rainbow. The page finishes by saying there is no hierarchy of value as such in Ifa, which, Sam, you mentioned earlier. There's no hierarchy of, well, so there's no hierarchy of value in as such in Ifa, as the
Yeah.
hierarchy of beings is dictated by placement and action. The social order is regulated by the chief of a village, city, or nation, but Ifa is also concerned with mastery over situations and skills.
Mm-hmm.
It says that, for instance, if a king seeks to learn the art of forging metal, he needs to approach Ogun, not as a king, rather as a student of metallurgy. While the blacksmith naturally gives due respect to the office of the king must also recognize that, when in the hall of the blacksmith, he is not the master of the art he is being mentored in. If we are forging a knife, the one who knows how best to accomplish this task should be the one in charge, no matter what his social status. The sensitivity to role and domain, skill and wisdom flows abundantly through Ifa, and these roles are not only assigned to human organization, but also in relation to plants and animals. For instance, a hunter seeking prey in the forest is not necessarily the master of the domain he is entering. However, the trees and plants in this domain can function as his teachers and allies.
Okay.
There's like 2 more paragraphs, and I could finish it off, and that would be the end of it. But I'll leave that up to you guys.
Let's do it.
Yep.
Let's hear that gnosis, man.
I'm gonna blow through this. In Yoruba societies, especially in the countryside, the exchanges between roles and a hierarchical dynamic occurs easily and naturally. This is because of the insistence upon building good character in Ifa. Alongside this is the recognition of what is being done and the necessity of attuning yourself to the act performed. This attitude is possible because good character, awareness, and gentleness are virtues of such enormous importance in a traditional Yoruba society. There is a hierarchy involved in Ifa and its cosmology, but this hierarchy is one of natural emanation and the proper assignment of a power for a given task. For instance, when an Obatala was sent to Earth to make dry land, he was not chosen because he was more important, but because he was the embodiment of consciousness and thoughtfulness. His recognition as the most important Orisa came about because of his character, which all beings in creation recognized. His prestige was the result of him demonstrating his worth through challenges and the way in which he resolved complicated situations.
Bravo, amigo. Bravo. Well, that's awesome, and I think that's a great way to end it. So, Nate, thanks for being here, and you and the skull and the Tom Brady idol, feet of clay, or whatever. Thanks for being here as always, Nate.
Thank you guys so much, Sam. It's been a pleasure, Vance. It's always good to see you. Oh my God, Vance, you read my mind. That's what I was thinking of, the dark side of the moon.
Oh.
And Miguel, thank you. Thanks, guys. It's been great.
It was my pleasure. And Vance, thanks for keeping us company and taking care of the chat room. Good stuff there.
It's about all I can manage. You know, it's kind of like being at your first baseball or football game. You don't know who's doing what, who's on first.
Who's on first, who's on second.
But so, interesting.
Yeah, very fascinating. Yeah.
And nice to meet you, Sam.
Yeah.
All right.
Good stuff. Very interesting. All right.
Sam, thank you so much. And again, it's finally good to interact with you in another medium. And of course, we will continue interacting as we all go on our evolution and voyages throughout this art world. Thanks for being here.
All right. You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. And for you in the chat room and everybody else, thank you so much. Again, if you could please help out. Right now, here I am lost in the computer with a loner, but this has definitely been worth it. I will continue fighting to spread that gnosis from people who have that salvific information. Again, with this interview will be out soon in all our podcasting channels and audio. So please help out and please enjoy. And most of all, keep writing your own gospel and living your own myth. That's all I can say. So good night, everybody, and thanks.
You're welcome.